There was once a time when we had to do all our calculations by writing them out. Back in those days, we had to use short names for the names of functions. We couldn't use depth for the name of a function. We couldn't use C time standing for clock time for the clock time. We couldn't write the function depth of clock time. We had to write something like f of x or f of t. We could have done this, but it would have taken us a lot longer to write out our calculations. And since people were actually paid to do calculations back in those days, that was not an efficient way to do things. Mathematicians were more interested in getting to the solution than they were in writing things with sensible notation. However, since we can now do algebra on the computer, we can take just a little extra time to type in the names of these variables, and the computer will do all the rest of the algebra for us. So once we type the names in once and tell the computer what kind of algebra we want done, or what kind of calculus, it will follow our instructions and keep the sensible names. Okay, this makes a lot more sense. Depth of clock time is 5 times clock time squared plus 7. Then f of t equals 5t squared plus 7. The reason it makes more sense is later on when you look back at it, you don't have to review what f means, what is this function f, or what t means in the circumstances. You know right away that it's a depth and clock time situation and not something else. Depth of 3 means we substituted 3 for clock time. So we're going to substitute 3 for clock time. We're going to get 5 times 3 squared plus 7 equals 52. When I first wrote this out, I apologize for the cross out. I just had plain old clock time. It wasn't squared, and I changed the example and had to cross that out. I apologize. Okay, let's look at this expression. Depth of clock time plus delta t. We've substituted clock time plus delta t for clock time. Well, we're going to do that. Where we have clock time here, we're going to have clock time plus delta t. And since clock time is squared, clock time plus delta t will be squared, and then as here, multiplied by 5, and then we're going to add 7. So when we see things written out in more expanded notation, in using words instead of just symbols to stand for functions and variables, it's because we can now do that, and there are cases where it makes it a whole lot easier to keep track of what things mean if we use meaningful names. If we had a situation where we had 3 functions f, g, and h, and we had 3 variables x, y, and z, it would be very easy to lose track of what f and g and h stand for and what x and y and z stand for. We'd have to expend a lot of mental effort keeping track of what our variables mean and our function names, whereas if we can use sensible names, it makes things much easier.